Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope everyone is doing well. I just want to take this moment to say a big thank you to Max Moskowitz for letting me jump on his channel for the last hour. That was great. Always love speaking to Max. And then I want to just shout out the moderators, Max, who's in here, Dan, The Signal, my brother, and Josh, UAP UK. Thank you for the work and, making sure the chat stay mature and classy. So I'm sure there'll be no problems. So yeah, let's get into it. Without further ado, guys, this is why we're here. I'd like to introduce Mr. Elizondo.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Lou. Thank you so much for joining me again. It is always an honor and a pleasure. So how are you doing today?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I know I say this, it's probably a cliche at this point, but every day above ground is a good day. So I'm not complaining. Everything is pretty good.
Good. And you've adjusted back to being at home after your trip at the last weekend?
I mean, honestly, I've traveled so much in my career, even before I ever did this. I adjust to time zones pretty quick. So for me, it's I don't really know where I am at any particular day until I look around and I realize what time zone I'm in. But yeah, I'm quite well, thanks.
No, good. Glad to hear it. Now, let's just bring up San Marino. I know it's pretty much been spoken about quite a few times this week. Max did an excellent job. Well, you and Max did an excellent job with the videos that you did live from San Marino. But let's just touch upon where we're at, if that's okay. Am I right in saying that it's now in the hands of the representatives within the government of San Marino as to when and if they take this to the United Nations?
Yeah, of course they want to make sure what they don't do it in a vacuum. What they're trying to do right now is make sure that other countries support this, and that makes political sense. You don't want to do something prematurely, and it winds up creating some sort of discord politically with other countries and allies and friends. San Marino is a very small country, but it's also one of the world's oldest republics. It's really interesting politically. They have two presidents, and those presidents are only in power for 6 months at a time.
Wow.
It's really the ultimate of sharing power, right? So here in our country, we have one president and a Congress and whatnot. There they have two, and they're only there for again 6 months, just long enough to not cause any harm, right? So it's in a way it's an advantage, but also in a way it's a bit of a disadvantage because every 6 months you have to kind of respin up an administration on what's important. So I do think the timing's right. Our Italian friends have done a fantastic job, both the CUN and ICER. Those two organizations as well have really done a lot to help set the stage to have this conversation in San Marino. And I think ultimately what we're looking at is the opportunity to create a Geneva-like type structure where you have the world can come together to this tiny little nation and have a it's funny, ironically enough, it'd be one of the world's smallest nations having one of the biggest, leading one of the biggest conversations, and I think there's a lot of beauty there. You don't have the politics of other countries, whether it's the United States or Russia or China or larger European countries. They seem to stay relatively immune to those type of politics. So yeah, that's kind of where we are. And right now we're trying to socialize the idea, make sure that other countries support this. So.
No, that's great. Thank you. I think that was leading into kind of my next point is whether you personally are planning on engaging with other governments within some of the other European countries, on a personal level. Is that something you're looking to do?
Absolutely. I mean, we talk about international engagement being one of the five fundamental pillars. When I somewhat just told everybody we're shifting into third gear, that's what I meant. It was very clear. It's time to take this conversation internationally and not just have the conversation, but really start to look at this thing differently. I one of the things I suggest is that I think one of the greatest hindrances we've faced politically anyways, and probably from a media perspective, has been this notion of, UFO conferences and UFO this and UFO that. And I'm wondering if maybe the way to handle this now is to, rather than have a UFO conference, now that I think we're at the point where that part of the conversation is over, we've now proven the reality of these things. We still don't know what they are, where they're from, or anything like that. But I think we're past that part of the conversation. I think what we need to do is slowly start changing the conversation vis-a-vis a UFO conference, and instead have a foreign affairs conference about UFOs. So rather than have a UFO conference and then part of that's about, politics and global politics, I think maybe the time has come for us to really frame this topic as a foreign affairs topic, right?
Yeah.
It involves all of us collectively, and that way, it's no longer just a UFO conversation. It's something much bigger, something much more meaningful. It's, hey, look, we now know the reality of these things. What does this mean for us as a country? What does this mean for us internationally and as a world? Inter and intra-agency efforts within governments, and within NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and big international, if you will, institutions like the United Nations, like NATO. And I think we're slowly beginning to see that, where the narrative is going from a once conspiratorial, little green men and silly little cartoons like that, to now one of, hey, this really is on the world stage. This is a serious conversation. It does involve foreign politics. It involves foreign relations and diplomacy. And maybe we need to start framing the conversation in that way.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, recently we've heard specifically here in the UK that they were somewhat uncooperative with the UAP task force. And obviously now with the National Defence Authorization Act specifying information from allies, do you think that might change? I mean, it's quite speculative, but
I don't want to speak for the UK government, but I do. I think that they will come along. I think that the UK government has to be very mindful of its public image, right? The UK government, like the American government and other governments, really tries hard to maintain its credibility with the people. And that makes sense from a governmental perspective. So historically, when they said nothing to see here, folks, it's kind of hard to go back on that, right? So I think what you start seeing is this undertone of cooperation between the United States and the UK. Maybe not overtly at first, but I think there are existing relationships, bilateral, multilateral relationships that we have with our very good friends in the UK. For example, the Five Eye Partnership.
Yeah.
So historically, we've been very close. We've shared information together. We've fought in wars together. So I do think that's going to happen. But in the long run, that's really not up. That's not up for me or the United States even to decide. That's up for the UK to decide. And this goes for any country who decides they don't want to be part of the conversation. Then don't. But you're going to get left behind in the conversation. If you're not in the conversation, then you can't be part of formulating the narrative. And then if you're not part of that, then you're victim to it. So my only fair word of warning would be, look, don't let the train pass you by. You can be selective on which car you want to jump on. Great. But I wouldn't let that train leave the station and leave you behind.
Yeah. Do you think it would be a good time as well for sort of UAP advocates to re-engage with MPs and Lords within the British government and the Defence Oversight Committees?
I do. And I think if we can frame it in a again, into a foreign affairs conversation, the problem is we always say things like, hey, we don't want to know the truth. And we know they're from the Pleiades and, Elvis on the mothership and you need to get engaged. Well, you're not going to get a whole lot of support that way. When you start saying, look, other countries are getting involved in this conversation. There is a national security issue here and border sovereignty. And there's also, by the way, a requirement for us to work with our friends and allies. Let's not forget that, it could be very easily confused, a UAP incident with some sort of foreign provocation, right? We've seen this already before with the United States and Russia, where we actually had to have a secret agreement between the two countries. So if someone saw something over the North Pole, we didn't start shooting nukes at each other. We could pick up a phone and be like, hey, Boris, is that you guys? Or they could call up and say, hey, Jack, comrade, is that you guys? And let's not, forget that we have other examples today, right? Where we have countries like India and Pakistan. Imagine these two countries, which, they're both friends of ours, but they don't necessarily get along with each other. What if we had a same incident like we did in the 1960s, where, a nuclear missile facility was disabled, right, by a UAP, and now one of those countries confuses it as some sort of provocation. There's a gentleman in India named Sabir Hussain, who was actually one of the first ones to bring this to the attention of some folks. And he tried to bring it up to their I guess you call it a Supreme Court. It works a little bit differently there in India, but he tried to raise, and good for him for doing so, because that's a real potential problem. It's not like it's fanciful, right? Because we've already seen that actually happen in the United States and even in Russia. So I do think it's important we start having that conversation when we talk to our elected officials and our representatives in our respective governments. Start framing this as a foreign policy issue and less as a conspiratorial little green men issue. It may turn out to be that way, but to have the conversation on the international level that we're looking for, we really have to begin to mature the conversation. We can't be stuck in the same conversation we've had for the last 70 years.
No, absolutely. Can you talk to any benefits that we might have if NATO were involved as well?
Yeah, I mean, forgive me, by the way, I've got something in my left eye here. I went on a little hike this morning and decided to do a little sweat to the oldies, and I think I got something in my eye, so I apologize.
No problem.
NATO is North Atlantic Treaty Organization, right? It's a fundamentally, I think, balancing agent. This, obviously during the Iron Curtain days, you had the Warsaw Pact and NATO. NATO is more of a military organization, but it does have some other functions as well. I think NATO is important from a UAP perspective. I want to make sure, because why? Well, because they're flying around all the time with aircraft, and sometimes those aircraft are armed. And again, we don't want to confuse UAP with any type of provocation. Mm. And they also have a lot of sensors that they can use to help collect additional information for us. So I do think NATO is important, but I also think that at the time, and I'll share this with you, I think we need to start taking this conversation outside of military channels and intelligence channels and opening the aperture. So, up until this point, we've been talking in my country to the Senate Armed Services Committee, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. But I think maybe the time has come to maybe, open this up to the Foreign Affairs Committee, right? Why not? And bring in State Department. Doesn't have to be just Department of Defense and the intelligence community and Department of Energy. Let's bring in the State Department, and maybe let's do that internationally as well. Let's start making this a geopolitical issue, right? Which is what it really is at the end of the day. Yeah. It really is. And there's parts of this conversation that really don't belong in the national defense arena. I don't think it does. It made that very clear. So I think when we talk about this conversation, whether it's to NATO or the United Nations or to the UK Parliament, if your listeners are out there and they want to get some traction on this, we need to up our game. We need to begin to elevate the conversation to where it belongs, right? And out of the world of the silliness and conspiracy and into the world of reality, right? And international politics and foreign policy. That would be my suggestion. And NATO does play a part in it, but they don't play the only part in it.
Right. No, I think that's good. And I think people will be pleased to hear that it isn't just being spoken about within sort of military realms of the countries. So I think that's a really positive way to
the
look.
Conversation started there, and it had to start there. And I know a lot of people really resented it. It's fear mongering and threat. But whatever, do a better job. If you think you can, be my guest. We had to start the conversation somewhere. And that's where we started it.
Yeah.
But that's not where the conversation ends. And this is, I've told people a long time ago, we have a roadmap. We're doing this very diligently. This is a marathon. If you don't have the patience for it, then pick up a hobby, pick up the piano, go pick up the violin, and check back in 5 years, or what, do a better job yourself. Stop bitching and do it. Stop waiting for me to do everything for you and Chris Mellon and other folks. Otherwise, if you like what we're doing, then a simple thank you would do, and we'll continue doing what we're doing. And I think we are helping with the conversation. I think it's becoming now the global conversation that we set it out to be. Now, I'll tell you too, in that same regard, the majority of people on UFO Twitter have been very helpful to this. They have been doing exactly what they should be doing. They've been talking and writing into their elected officials. Their letters are super, super high quality, and it's making a difference because they're not being silly. They're being serious, and they're having a great elevated conversation with their elected officials, and they're making calls right, and they're not sounding conspiratorial and well, quite frankly, unhinged. They're coming across as fair-minded and rational, and that's working. That's exactly what we need to have this conversation and continue to take it to the next level.
That's amazing. Good to hear that it's making a difference. I mean, I've got a give a shout out to Luis Jimenez and the guys at the Unidentified Celebrity Review.
Absolutely.
The Big Phone Home. These things do work. So,
Vinnie, we were with Max and Moscovich in San Marino. And, he got a chance to see kind of a backstage play politically, how this is playing out. And I'm certainly not going to speak for Max, but, I was glad that he was there because journalists aren't usually offered that inside perspective.
Right.
And he had a hell of an inside perspective. He got to see things that probably publicly, would never be mentioned. And he was in the front row seat watching it all unfold. And I think that was very helpful. It was helpful for us because it showed that people were taking this serious in the media. Yeah. But I think it also helped maybe Max a little bit because he knew that there were professionals inside other governments that were taking this topic very seriously. There was a lot of representation at this little meeting we had there in San Marino. There were some pretty senior people from other countries that were participating in this little conference that we had with ICER and the CUN. And every time I've gone to one of these over the years, last couple of years, it keeps getting better and better. No longer are people selling mood rings and beads and things like that outside. These are you have astrophysicists, you have aerospace directors of aerospace organizations there, and they're listening and they're having conversations. No one's trying to sell anybody anything other than have a conversation, and that's meaningful. It's working because we're the topic of UAP is no longer one about personal narratives and agendas and conspiracies. It's now about reality, facts, data, science, right? And it's resonating.
That's amazing to hear, and that does just show how far we've come, and I think it will continue to go in a positive direction. So no, good to hear. Thank you for that. I'd like to switch this round and first of all start off by congratulating you on the recent announcement that you're bringing out a book. So congratulations on that. Now,
thank you.
A lot of people saw this headline article within the Hollywood Reporter that the book will reveal shocking details. And now we all know what people on social media like. A lot of are speculating and making claims that it's a pay for disclosure tactic, which of course they're going to. Can you just set the record straight, please? And so we can.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, what I'll say is that I'm writing the book. Second of all, is that the intended audience is for a lot of people that have never even gone onto UFO Twitter. What I will say, and I won't go into any more detail than this, is that the purpose of the book is going to be very, very apparent when it comes out. And I think people who know me are going to be like, that clever guy. People who don't know me are going to probably wind up having to eat some of their words. It's funny to watch social media and people go way out on a limb and start making speculation, wild speculation. It's a money grab. It's pay for play. Okay, well, think that if you want to. But when the book comes out and people really they read it and go, holy crap, this makes sense. Now we understand why you did the way you did it when you did it. Will they apologize? No. They'll just, they'll go hide in the little deep dark corners of Twitterverse and maybe change their name or something. But I'm used to it. For the last 3-4 years, I've been used to people always accusing me of one thing. They're never happy, no matter what you do for them, no matter how you do it. You've just got people that are sharpshooting you. They're throwing rocks. I don't know why that is. It's sad.
Yeah.
I really hope that those type of people find whatever peace they're looking for. But if there's one thing, my track record speaks for itself. People should know me now at this point that I'm not a money grab kind of guy. I do things very deliberately, very strategically. And again, I think the book is going to serve a very specific purpose. And I think people are going to be delighted when it comes out. That's where we are with that. I'm not going to go into much more detail than that.
Sure.
But I think it's going to be very, very eye-opening. And I think people are going to come back and say, holy cow, wow, that was exactly the way to do it. And by the way, it's my narrative. So, when I sit there and I do an interview on a major news media, these are like 2 to 3 minute sound bites.
Yeah.
And it's not it. And by the way, I don't control their editing. This is my narrative from my perspective without any filter. You get to read exactly how I feel about every single thing about this topic. moving forward. And there's going to be some information in there that I do not normally have the liberty or the time to discuss. There's going to be a lot in there, but again, there's a very deliberate reason why I'm chosen to do this, and I think it will be very, very clear once the book is out, and that's all I'll say.
No, fantastic. That's all you need to say. Thank you so much for that. Are you able to give us any like ETA on when we can expect to see it?
I can't. I'm very busy. It's going to take me a little bit of time.
Sure.
I'm dancing as fast as I can.
I can imagine.
I'm trying. I've got, for example, like in a couple of days, I got to be back in DC, and then I've got some more travel, and it's, somewhere in there, I've got to find some time to really just,
I understand completely. Do you mind? Is the DC thing Inspector General related? Can you elaborate on that at all?
Too early for me to discuss that. It is related to the topic, and I'll leave it at that.
Fabulous. No, I respect.
Believe me, I try to avoid DC as much as possible. I don't go to DC unless I have to go to DC, and it's about this topic. That's why I live out in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, because I've had my fill of DC. And no offense to those who live in DC, but that's a young person's game. I'm just too old. I tell people this is gray, not blonde. I'm an old guy, and the further I can stay away from Washington, D.C., the better for my sanity.
Fair enough, completely. Now, Lou, something that is brought up regularly with yourself, especially recently, has been this super obvious sensor system that I get bombarded with questions and things about. So I kind of felt like I had to bring it up with you. But are you able to talk about it? Because I've got some ideas of what we think it is, and this is me and all the colleagues in the community. If we can discuss it? Can you put it to bed for us? Because
I won't answer. I won't confirm or deny, because what I don't want to do is be preemptive. It is ridiculously simple, but it takes a little bit of time and resources to do it. And what I want to do is, it doesn't rely solely on like a thing. It's not like a sensor that I put down, and it's a little bit more complex than that. But the data, what I will say is that we have every reason to believe that the data already exists. It's already out there, and it's been right under our noses the whole time.
Wow, that kind of. I'm going to have to go back and dig.
By the way, at some point we will talk about it once we can get the data. And if it turns out that it doesn't work, we'll tell everybody to look. This was a dead end. But right now, it's most of the folks, the scientists, are nodding their heads, saying, "Yeah, that could be it."
Wow, that's intriguing still. But no, I respect your position on that. So guys, for everyone watching, I tried. I said I would. Right, let's move on then. One thing that I saw recently, and a lot of other people have spoken to me about, is an interview that Tom DeLonge did recently. Now, I'm not going to ask for you to speak on behalf of Tom or anything, but he talked about the 3 videos that came out through TTSA, the 3 Navy videos that we all know so well. But he said there were actually 26 videos. One specifically of a craft 10 feet away from an F-18 scanning the plane for 20 minutes. Now, this sounds familiar. Add 3 minutes onto that, and it's the thing we've been talking about for a while. Now, one thing that Tom said, and I quote, "We almost got that one out." Is that something you're aware of? Did we come close to getting that video out in the past?
I can't speak for Tom. I love the guy. I really do. Tom's Tom.
Yes, I think we know that.
Sometimes Tom says things that even I have to look and say, "What?
Okay,
where'd you get that?" Again, I don't want to speak for Tom. I'm very. If you've probably noticed, people like Chris and I are very measured in what we say. I'd rather under promise and over deliver. That's kind of my MO. I know it drives people crazy, and they start losing patience. And we want to know now. I get it, but there's nothing worse than over promising something. And so, I'm very careful. What I have said is what I have said for the record, and it's that type of stuff that will someday, hopefully soon, continue to be established and reaffirmed. everything I've ever said to about this topic has always been truthful and has always come to fruition. And hopefully people by now realize that I've left breadcrumbs for 3.5 or 4 years on this topic. And every single one of those things have come to fruition. But I'm also very measured. I don't like to overpromise because I don't want to disappoint anybody. I don't want anybody's expectations, any type of false expectations. It's really, really important, especially on this topic, because it is so emotional for so many people. And there is an expectation for me to always be accurate and always provide the truth. It's an expectation people have, and it's an expectation I have of myself. So for that reason, a lot of times I tend to be a little bit more subdued, simply because I don't want to do anything and set anybody's expectations, and then all of a sudden I fail to deliver even a little bit on that. So if you look at my Twitter page, I always say on there, I will always own my own mistakes, and I will, and I do. At least the mistakes that I realize I make, right? There's those you can't the ones that you don't realize you make, then those are the ones that get you usually. But that's my perspective. I'm not going to comment on what Tom says or does. Tom is Tom.
Sure.
And I guess that's that.
No, that's great. No worries. Thank you. I mean, I think we all know that some statements do go out there a little bit. So, no, that's fine. Let's talk about this new AI tool. I know you've mentioned it again, but is this the one? Is it related to the Scout tool that TTSA were working on, or is this a completely new platform?
Well, I'm almost tempted to share a screen and show you a little dry run. I don't know if I can do that. Would you be okay with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, let me see if I can do this. Stand by. Let me first pull this up.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm going to pull this up first before I share the screen, because I know you have some very clever people that will absolutely screen grab every single thing I do.
Yes.
So let me see if I can pull this up. I'm probably going to get myself in trouble for this, but give me a second here.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so here it is. Here's the case study. And what I'm going to do, let me caveat a few things here first, okay, when I do this, because I don't want anybody. Let me see if I can share the screen now. Give me a second. Okay. See, I don't know how I can share this screen without all of a sudden everybody and their mother looking at it. Let me see if I can do it this way. Yeah, I can do it this way. Okay, let's try this. Let me come back to you. Zoom. No, not on Zoom. I'm on StreamYard, right?
StreamYard, yeah.
Okay, StreamYard. Let me close out of Zoom. Okay, let me.
And then at the bottom of the screen on StreamYard is the share button. If you click that, then I can add your screen.
Okay, let's try this. Boom. Video share screen. Okay. Share screen. Would like to record this computer screen. So I'm allowing you to record it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that just allows it to go into the live feed.
Okay. Share. Is it sharing right now or no?
I'm not seeing anything. No.
Let's see here. Entire screen. Yeah, I'm trying to. Here we go. Let's try that. Is it working now? No.
No.
Follows. It says Chrome has lost permission to capture your screen. Okay, follow these steps. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry.
No, don't worry about it. We'll happily wait.
Browser is checked. Yes, browser Chrome. Well, shoot, guys.
Restart the app, it says.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me walk you through it. So that's obviously not going to work. See, this is why I don't like to overpromise, right? Because then it never works out. So what I did in San Marino.
Sorry, people in the chat saying, can you send it to Vinnie? Is this something that you're allowed to share with me?
It's a huge file. So it's a video that was taken on a military installation by an individual who was a military officer who said they saw a black flying disc, and it was hovering. And so the video was poor quality. We apply some AI to it, and all of a sudden we show what the AI can do. And there's this black hovering disc. And then we apply the AI to it to look at the background, the pixelation, the object itself. And what I will say is that things aren't always what they seem. And
Yeah.
the point to this whole exercise was it's very, very important that quality of data it's imperative, because you need to be able to not only prove something is authentic, but you also need to be able to prove that it is not authentic, right? Or that there's something else going on. And in order to separate the signal from the noise, because ultimately that's the type of data that gets people to really listen. And I have a presentation here that I provided when I was in San Marino. I think it was recorded, but that was I was going to show you part of that presentation now.
Okay.
And I think it really helps people really grasp where we are. People look at that and they go, oh, okay. Because I talk about in some detail the 5 pillars of engagement. I talk about what we've been collectively able to achieve in the last 3 years. Then I talk about what we're doing right now, things that are happening right now behind the scenes. And then I talk about where do we go into the future? What does tomorrow look like? And so I have some ideas, construct of what a federal lab would look like and who's all participating. And then I go into some technology and we talk about the AI, and I actually do a dry run. I actually show, hey, look, boom, 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 boom. And by the time we're done, people are kind of like, wow, holy smokes, that's going to be available to all of us. And we're like, well, we're working on. I mean, it ain't cheap, but that's what we're in the process of building.
So is that file, sorry to interrupt, is that file something you can send me that I can then share with everyone at a later date?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm getting it to Skyfort on WeTransfer because it is such a huge file. So Sean and Jake and Jess will have it, and more than happy to share it with you.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I think you'll find it. I mean, most people when they see it, they're at that point they kind of say, "Oh, okay, we get it. This is this is the roadmap of how we got to where we are today." And you're right. This is probably the way we should probably be leaning to go in the future. Anyways, so
no, that's fantastic. So just because everyone in the chats on the edge of their seats wanting to see
okay,
it.
Let me try one more time here.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm sorry, guys. Let's just try this again. All right, let's see if we can get this thing up and running. I'm going to try one more time. Okay, so I've got this up here. Yep. Boom. Let me go to share. Share screen. Yep. Share screen to monitors. Share screen. Entire screen. Yep. And when I hit share, it says Chrome has lost permission to capture your screen. So for whatever reason, Chrome isn't letting me do it. I apologize.
No, honestly, it's not your fault. I've not had this issue before, so unfortunately, I don't know what to suggest.
And so, see here, Vinnie, I'm telling people I want to, under promise, over deliver. And here's a perfect example, right? you try to do something, man, and you crash and burn. So, my apologies.
Well, no, like you said, you said you'd send it to me. So for everyone watching, when I get it from Lou,
yeah, we'll get it out to folks.
I'll put a video out on YouTube or something, and so yeah. Great. Can we just ask about when the tool is released to the public? Is it going to be an app? Is it going to be internet-based software, or what format?
We're working on that now. The problem is it's expensive. Look, AI. First of all, there's some pros and cons to AI. First of all, AI is great because it never gets tired. It works 24/7. It doesn't suffer from human fatigue. But there's also some limitations. First of all, not all AI is created equally. 2, AI, if you don't train it right, AI is only as good as its teacher, and humans are its teacher. If you don't train it right in the beginning, problems and misidentifications will propagate forever. So if I, for example, say on the AI that this is a car, not a cell phone, from that day forward, every time it sees this, it'll call it a car. Right. And then false analytics are further applied to it. It's like a cancer, just grows and grows and grows. So we're working on that. There's also a massive upfront cost associated with it. It will be free. There'll be a version that's free for everybody to use. It ain't cheap. We've got some really, really good people that are working, some of the best AI people, frankly, in the world, in my opinion, that are working on this. And they're putting a lot of time and money and effort into it. So there will be hopefully a free version. There will be a free version, just hopefully it'll be soon. We want to work out the bugs. The last thing we want to do is make the mistake that other people do. You provide something that's supposed to be an answer all for everybody, and all of a sudden it's not ready for prime time, right? And it ends up becoming a miserable failure. I don't want to do that.
No.
Again, back to under promise, over deliver. That's what we're trying to do. And by the way, we've been working on this for a few years now behind the scenes. I haven't provided an update to it because I didn't think there was any update to provide until we had something.
Yeah, that makes sense. Excellent. I'm going to move on to some questions that were submitted through my some of my social medias. So this one is from an anonymous person. When it comes to set sizes and shapes of UAP, have you ever come across anything on the micro scale when it comes to a UAP?
What a great question. No, but that doesn't mean anything. If you're not looking for it, then you don't see it necessarily. So I think that's a great question. It's something that we collectively haven't really considered, but it's certainly a possibility. Look, we make micro UAVs, right? So we have technology to do that. So I think certainly it's in the realm of possibility. Frankly, maybe even the realm of likelihood. It's just something we haven't really looked at yet.
Fabulous, thank you. This one was actually a super chat from our conversation with Gary the other day that I said I promised that I would ask. So this is for Mr. Carl Vibe. Firstly, this is a three-parter. First, will Lou go on my show?
Sure.
There you go.
Next question.
Can you explain the heavy references to Greek mythology in the TTSA books and the Masonic symbols in their cartoons?
Look, again, this is a Tom DeLonge question. Tom has admitted it's a work of fiction, and inspired by his perspective. That perspective isn't necessarily shared by others. I'm not in TTSA anymore.
Sure.
Neither is Chris Mellon or Steve Justice or Hal. Tom has made it clear he's pursuing entertainment in this topic, and he's entitled to do so. And entertainment can be very effective tools for having a conversation. It's just not my expertise or specialty. And when people say, well, you're doing a TV show and isn't that entertainment? Well, there's a difference between entertainment and infotainment. Unfortunately, sometimes you have to make information a little bit interesting for people to pay attention. Yeah. I'm not an entertainer. I never have been. I never will be. My job is to just try to present the truth and the facts in a consumable way. That's it. I don't consider myself an entertainer. And so entertainment is not my thing. Sure. The books, Secret Machines, that him and Lavenda wrote, I think according to Tom, he's got some theories in there that Tom subscribes to. But I can't provide any comment. It's not, I don't know.
No, that's fair enough. And the third and final part of that question, or these questions, is: has Lou ever been trained in remote viewing?
Let's pass on that one for now.
Sure.
I don't want to. What I don't want to do is I don't want to distract from the topic at hand. I don't want anything in my past or my background. It's already a distraction, and people find out certain things about your background and assignments you have, and all of a sudden, oh, he's a bad guy and he shouldn't do that. And why would he ever do a mission like that? Well, it was my mission. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you. You can do what you're told when you serve your government.
Yeah.
That's and if you don't want to, then don't serve your government. I'm not forcing anybody to do that.
No.
I don't want those elements, any elements of my background to be a distraction of the conversation we're having today. And unfortunately, it will be. Anything in someone's background can always be, viewed in either a positive or a negative way. And I don't want to distract.
Absolutely. No problem. Thank you anyway. Another anonymous question here. Could the 2019 events involving the USS Kidd, USS Russell, and the other Navy ships actually have been a training exercise specifically intended to bait UAP?
What a great question. I'm not going to answer that question because that's a question that probably the government needs to answer for itself.
Sure, no problem.
Great question.
Yeah, I like that one definitely, because that was something I was looking into for quite some time, and I think I asked you the bait question on our last interview a couple of months ago, and that just really fitted together for me. So I appreciate it. This is a question
Sure.
from Benji, and this is another one about baiting. Can you talk to whether these methods of baiting that have been used have actually been successful?
I'm gonna have to take a polite pass on that too. By the way, it is amazing the questions now, how they have evolved over the last 3 years. Before it was, questions like, is Elvis alive? Right now, now the questions are like really, really good, very, very insightful. Someone's been doing their homework for sure.
Yeah.
So thank you for those wonderful questions. I suspect we will be able to answer them soon. I'm not at liberty to even go down that road right now. But those are great. Keep asking those questions.
No, understood. This one is from Graham. When you joined ATIP, did you ever consider it was simply a make work project and a waste of time, even though you may have had assurances when being invited to join?
No, absolutely not. It was never a waste of time. It was money well spent. In fact, the U.S. taxpayer got one hell of a deal out of it for the $22 million. We dual use the hell out of it, man. We got shit. Excuse my language. We probably got $100 million worth of work out of that 22 million bucks. It's a shame that other government offices couldn't do the same. But no, I think it was money well spent, and I think it was time and resources well spent.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Another anonymous one here. What are your thoughts on the Hessdalen lights phenomenon? Do you think that there's an important connection to what we're seeing now in more recent times?
So the what lights, if you could repeat that?
The Hessdalen lights. It's a phenomenon that was studied, I think it was Norway back in the 1980s.
Unfortunately, and I know probably we're going to think I'm, fibbing here, but I don't know. I may know the event. The name may be throwing me off. I don't know specifically Hessdalen events. We focus, at ATIP on current military events, some historical stuff, but usually U.S. related for the most part.
No,
not other ones. Can you describe for me a little bit of what happened?
Yeah, I think it was over a number of years. It was these sightings that were happening regularly, and I think it was relating to a lot of things like ball lightning and things along those lines. Sometimes apparently physical craft as well.
Yeah, so ball lightning is something very interesting. Obviously it's a natural phenomenon. There's also, we see ball lightning and other type of electromagnetic discharge associated with a great amount of release of energy from tectonic movements. Typically right before or during an earthquake, you can see the whole atmosphere start to light up. You also have, aurora borealis. You have something called sprites, which is kind of this shooting of plasma up from the clouds up into the upper atmosphere. And then, of course, you have man-made stuff. And this is important because what people don't realize over the Northern Hemisphere, a lot of ballistic tests as it relates to ballistic missiles are flown over the Northern Hemisphere. And so a lot of times, first stage solid rocket booster motors on reentry will come in. You get this weird spiral effect, and it looks almost like a pinwheel. Because when you're talking about high altitude, you're talking very, very low air pressure, air density. Pressure is almost nil. And so the way a gas behaves in a vacuum environment is substantially different than the way a gas might behave down here, at our pressure. And so a lot of times you can, kind of fool the eye. You look at the eye, you look up in the space, and you see this object doing all sorts of weird stuff. When in reality, it's just, it could be a hydrazine tank bleeding off some propellant, unused propellant, and when you look at that from the ground, it can look pretty amazing. So that's why it's important AI, going back to our conversation about AI, that we can utilize AI, recognize those signatures, recognize those known patterns of the way things behave, and then filter the proverbial wheat from the chaff, right? Or isolate the signal from the rest of the noise. And that's when you have the aha moment, because the last thing you want to do is say, look, here's a UAP, and it turns out, no, actually it's not, right? It's Starlink, for example, right?
Yeah.
So There you
Excellent. Thank you. Where are we? Here we go. Mr. Joshua Ringer, in your experience with the UAP phenomenon, has anything happened or any knowledge been gained that would impact your thoughts on the afterlife?
Ooh. Wow. Thank you for asking that question. If anything, it shows that the universe is far more wondrous than we ever give it credit for. I will share my own personal thoughts, and let me caveat they are only my opinion.
Sure.
But I'm fairly convinced death is a process, no different than birth. It's a transition, and I say that because I've seen enough of my fair share of death up close and personal, both in terrible circumstances and in circumstances that were more natural. Death is a transition, in my opinion. It's no different than walking over the threshold from somewhere else into this life, and then stepping over the threshold back to something else. We've long known, and by the way, a lot of religions also subscribe to this, that we know that energy cannot be created or destroyed, right? It just moves on, transforms. At some point I may share a little bit of my personal experiences. Again, I don't want to distract from the topic of UAP, because at the end of the day, it's really not relevant what I think. It's not relevant my experiences on this kind of stuff. What matters is what the facts and the data suggest, right? What the facts say. So I'm always very keen, because the moment you go from scientific discussion to spirituality, it's kind of a slippery slope. And what we've got to do is we've got to make sure we don't blend the two together. We really, really, really have to be careful. Now, I'm going to share something with you real quick, a quote, because I think it's relevant. And I shared this with Christina not too long ago. And then I sent it to my Skyfork guys, and they actually were able to put a really neat little chart together. Let me pull this up in a second.
Sure.
Because, as I do feel that science is important. I tend to stick to the scientific methodology of things. I think it's important we do that. But, and it's a big but, there's a whole nother part of human existence that science really can't explain. And not only can it explain, it really has no purview either. So let me pull this up here. Okay, I'm gonna have to do this the old-fashioned way. Here we go. Okay. So this is about scientism. Okay. Scientism is a speculative worldview about the ultimate reality of the universe and its meaning. Once you accept that science is the only source of human knowledge, you have adopted a philosophical position of scientism that cannot be verified or falsified by science itself. And so why is that interesting to me? Well, because in the pursuit of science, scientists often wind up adopting scientism. And I don't think scientism is any different than any other religion out there. And we must be careful of that. We must understand that there are limitations to science. There are limitations to current and modern technology. And I also will remind people that every well substantiated scientific principle today that we just accept as being, no kidding, started off as somebody's wacky, zany hypothesis at some point in the past, without exception. So lest we forget that, and remember that in the pursuit of science, let's not get lost in the world of scientism. I do think there's much to this universe that is not necessarily can be explained by science. Look at the reality of love, right? If I ask you what is love, well, we all agree that there's a thing called love because we all feel it, and yet we'll all explain it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
You can't touch it.
Good
you
point.
Can't see it. You can't hear it. You can't smell it. You can't weigh it. You can't measure it. and yet it's something as universal as you and me, and as real as our planet, right? Look at maternal instinct. Look at this is something that is so innately strong in some human beings that it goes contrary to the survival of the individual itself. They will literally kill themselves to protect and defend the next offspring. So it is real. You can pretend that it's not, but it is. And there's an example of the reality of something that is spiritual, something that we can't measure through science, and yet is as very real as anything else that we deal with. So, anyways, long-winded answer. I didn't mean to digress too much, but
no
you were
worries.
asking me a question that I want to answer fairly.
Sure.
But I also don't want to overstate my, if you will, my position, overstep my position in providing this information.
Sure.
It's too important of a topic, and I don't want my opinion to detract from our pursuits of trying to figure out what these are.
No, that was great. That was well explained, and yeah, I appreciate that. So thank you. I'm going to move on to this question from Road Warrior. Can you please ask Lou what he knows about the UFO and Navy situation in Puerto Rico, specifically Lake Cartagena and the Puerto Rico Trench?
It ain't just Puerto Rico, and you're right. That's an awfully deep trench, 22,000 feet deep. A lot of strange, weird things happen there. You do have some seismic activity and some subduction zones, but you also have a lot of other stuff going on. There has been reports, as part of the, Bermuda Triangle. So there's a reason why people have always talked about the Bermuda Triangle. I mean, weird things do happen. Now, it can possibly be explained by science, but in reality, we don't yet know exactly what's going on there. We've had many accounts of, I'll tell you, I talked to somebody in the Navy. When was it? Give me a second. I'll tell you exactly when. Day before yesterday, my wife and I are at a restaurant, and a gentleman comes up and says, "Hey, I recognize you." And so we started chatting, and I was in the Navy, and he said, "I was in the Navy. I want to thank you for your service." And these are the ships. He sent me pictures of the ships he was on.
Wow.
Really, really neat. And then he goes to tell me about how when they were in the Bermuda Triangle, they would have all these interesting experiences. Now, this is a U.S. Navy ship that is a submarine tender, right? This is
Right.
the ship that's responsible for stocking up and supplying a nuclear submarine. And, they've got a lot of really good equipment on board. And when he says everything goes blank and dead on the boat, that's an indicator that, hey, man, I mean, we got backups, we got redundancy, we've got all sorts. And he told me at one point they had to get a guy out with an old-fashioned sextant because in order to even navigate, every single thing went down on the boat. They were completely blind. And that's in modern times, man. That's a modern ship, 1,200 foot ginormous hunk of steel on the water that's got all sorts of capability on board, just going dead in the water.
That's incredible.
I can. I mean, I don't want to. He didn't give me permission to share with everybody, but I can. Well, again, your people are too savvy. I throw a picture up real quick, but I know exactly what will happen if I do that. So better not. But that's modern times. And we also had reports of UAP. We know that there were a lot of, and USO. And the question is, are UAP really part of the USO phenomenon? Well, anecdotally, it seems like, there is, that transmedium travel, that maybe USOs are part of the greater UAP issue. Certainly seems to be enough information to suggest that. So, that's a really interesting place, Puerto Rico, for more than just one reason.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. This next question, are you still involved in conversations regarding metamaterial testing, or are you having conversations with people that are involved?
Absolutely. And things are going well, and I'll leave it at that.
Brilliant. Is that something we might hear about in the future then?
I sure hope so.
Yeah.
That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm not doing it to keep it secret, man. I just got to make sure that, we do it in the right way. And we got to let, science do its thing.
Absolutely. Now I'm going to open this up to the people in the live chat. Now, if you want to ask questions, get them in. I can't read them all, I'm afraid, but we'll have a go. Mr. Christian Thompson, does aliens live in other frequencies here on Earth?
Ooh, well, that's been one of the hypotheses that has been presented. We don't know. We know a lot of reality exists in other frequencies. Again, your cell phone is a perfect example. There's realities all around it that we can't perceive, whether it's Wi-Fi or FM and AM and cell signal and GPS. It's imagine if you had this ability to have uh, you know uh, FM vision, right? Where now all of a sudden you could see in the FM band. What would the world look like, right? Well, that's reality. That's what these things do all the time. So we know that 99.9% of reality lies outside of the very narrow electro-optical spectrum that we call visible light. Everything is either too high or too low for us to perceive, and so by definition, there are a lot of things that can thrive in these other frequencies. Now, when I say thrive, let me give you an example. A bumblebee will look at flowers through ultraviolet and be able to look at certain flowers in a certain way and know which flowers it wants to go and it will take the nectar and it subsequently pollinates. We don't see an ultraviolet, so we have no idea that whole world existed, and yet these honeybees live their life, perceiving in the ultraviolet spectrum. That's their reality. Now, can things live in other frequencies? Great question. There's all sorts of anecdotal information to suggest that it might not even be just frequencies. There was a time in the universe where scientists speculate where the amount of matter and antimatter in the universe, it could have gone the other way. We live in a world that we call all this matter, but it could have been antimatter that wound up winning out, and life could have evolved exactly like it is now, except for it's the opposite of matter in a sense that it's antimatter. And we would be living in an antimatter world. Maybe the world we live in now is the antimatter world. We just call it the matter world because we don't know what else to call it. But my point being is that there's a lot of possibilities of reality, and we need to make sure, without getting lost in those worlds, right? And all of a sudden creating these these pseudo religions about it. We have to recognize that there are alternatives. There are realities out there that are far beyond our comprehension and understanding, simply because of the fact we are a biological organism that are living in very specific confines within a very specific paradigm. But not all things in the universe are confined to that. We talk about life existing in a Goldilocks, part of our solar system,
Yeah.
and we expect other life to exist in that Goldilocks. But we know there's life forms on our own planet right now that if you were to bring it to where you and I are, would it's not a Goldilocks. They die instantly. I remember fishing off the coast of better not say, but I was off of a particular place not too long ago, taking some R&R, and we did some fishing, and a buddy of mine threw some line in, and the line just kept going down and down and down and down and down. And all of a sudden, he caught something, and he starts reeling it up, and he catches this little fish. And unfortunately, the fish, because it lived so deep in the water, its paradigm, that was its natural state, very cold, very dark. By the time he brought the little fish up, it had embolized. Unfortunately, the fish died. And but the point being is that it was brought into a hostile environment. What we consider our Goldilocks area, if you will, environment here just on this planet is not even Goldilocks for a lot of living things. In fact, it's hostile, it's caustic, it'll kill it. That's a case in point. So we have to be careful when we say things that, well, everything, that living things can only live, on a planet that's so far from its sun with these temperatures and these oxygen levels. And that's simply not true. That's simply not true. We have to think beyond that. There are examples of life forms on our very own planet that have to live in what we would consider inhospitable environments. If you bring it to our environment, that's inhospitable. And so,
no, excellent, thank you. Witness Citizen UAP, thank you for the super sticker, my friend Sean. Can you tell us about an ATIP study of a Brazil case?
Yeah, there were a few. I suspect they're talking about Colares. I had the distinct honor to be at a meeting when General Uchoa was there for a debriefing. I got to be careful not to go too far down here because that report may still be sensitive. But he provided us a lot of detail to include some of the casualties that were deaths from some of his men had as a result of the Colares incident, and video and photographs, and it was very, very compelling. And it was well known, and it was accepted by all the military brass because they were there for it. And it was over a long period of time. This wasn't like a 5-10 minute incident. I mean, this had occurred over days.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I mean, it was very compelling, and that was definitely one of the interesting ones that we looked at in Brazil. You know, who's doing a really good job with this right now is James Fox, the producer.
Yeah.
James Fox. He and I talk quite a bit, and you know, we share things and leads. And I don't want to speak for him, but he's hot on the case of some really interesting stuff, and I'll leave it at that.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Always intrigued by the Colaris case. I've lost my questions. Sorry, guys. Here we go. Kashi Chris, Aguadilla, Puerto Rico, 2013. Have you studied and can you provide any insight whether it's valid? Does the ship really break up in the end, or is it possible that is our perception once it touches the water?
No, we studied it, and it was real. It was a DHS helicopter, and I know the military installation that was taken over. I know exactly when it happened. That's very legit. You know, there was some concern initially because this was at a interesting time, and the United States had some sensitive facilities there, and yeah, it was real. As for the what you're talking about, the breakup, there does seem to be portions of it where the object goes underwater without making a splash. Again, transmedium travel, right? And does so without losing velocity and then coming back out again. And as far as splitting into two, it looks like that looks like it's not an echo on the image. It looks like it actually did. We don't know what it is. I will tell you that there were some folks that did it, you know, in all fairness, they had a really compelling argument about some Chinese lanterns that were launched for a wedding nearby. Turns out that the winds were not favorable for that. It wasn't, those probably weren't, you know, these Chinese lanterns they were referring to. But I appreciate the fact that people were looking at it from a fair and objective way. And they were bringing in all the data, right? What were the prevailing winds, right? What was going on at that time? I get stuff all the time from people on the inside of the government, you know, kind of freaked out. They're like, "Hey, check this out. We just caught this over a military installation," you know. And sometimes they're just balloons. They're just balloons. They're balloons that, you know, look from were released from a party, maybe someone's 31st birthday, and then the number 3 gets lost up in the air, and now that 3 is turned sideways and now looks like some sort of readable shape, and people start freaking out, right? You know, so I'm pleased to say that there's a lot of people really looking at this. I will also say, and please forgive me, I know people are going to be absolutely throwing stones at me, but you know, I applaud people like Mick West. I don't necessarily applaud their conclusions all the time because, you know, there's a difference between providing an analytic opinion and being conclusive. But I do think it's important that we have people that are trying to find explanations, because again, that's how we separate the signal from the noise. The more we look, the more we know what a conventional technology looks like, the better and easier it makes it later on to isolate the real thing. And so that's why I think people like Mick West and others are actually doing a wonderful service for us. We may not necessarily like how they do it, but I think it's important that we allow people to have that conversation. It's you know, you don't want to live in an echo chamber, even if you don't agree with them. The last thing you want to do is live in an echo chamber. We want to have all voices heard.
Absolutely. No, fantastic. Thank you. Braden, Ross Coulthard's docu, Lou states, no visible propulsion system, no obvious signs of lift, no wings, no ailerons, no elevators, cockpits, no rivets. Are photos and vids that detailed or seen in person?
Yes.
Wow. Thank you very much. Oh, I do remember, I've got a question written here on my pad. Are you following the current updates with regards to the mysterious Tucson drone case?
Sure am.
And what do you think at the moment? Because I think the latest we saw that there was some internal emails where they now saying that they saw like quadcopter blades. So,
well, if you see rotors, then the chances are it's a conventional technology. You know, that's, I mean, that's concerning for a whole different set of reasons. That means there's some sort of adversary that's using conventional technology
Yeah.
and has somehow figured out a way to have these things loiter for a lot longer and maneuver in ways that we really have a hard time understanding. We need to make sure that's what was seen. But chances are, if there's rotors associated with it, then there's a high degree possibility that it's something very conventional. But we need to see. We need those emails to be. I know Tom and others, really have a very specific perspective on this, and I respect that perspective, and I think they're right some of the time. I do.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things, that look, our foreign adversaries are developing and trying to leapfrog our technology every day, and they are developing some pretty crazy stuff, just like we are. And sometimes they'll test it, and they'll test it to see our response. That's no surprise. We've been doing that for 70, 80, 100 years, right? So it's okay for us to have this conversation. I don't have an opinion yet. If it turns out that those emails are legit, then chances are it's probably a drone. That's why we have to be very careful in the beginning. I know when we see data, we're very tempted to jump and say, "See, here's another example. Here's a UFO." Well, again, okay, but I caution everybody from doing that. We really need data. And the good news is, that same data that's used to prove something is just a quadcopter, at the end of the day, can be the same data that proves it isn't. And all of a sudden, now you've got something really revolutionary on your hands. You've got something that's behaving that nothing does. And we've got it from multiple sensors, and we've got it from the eyewitness. And now you're like, okay, that's, that doesn't have, rotor wash. That doesn't have a propeller. It doesn't have wings, cockpits, ailerons, elevators, none of that. And that thing is flying, and it's flying in a way that we can't. That's when you have something special.
Yeah, definitely. Because I've been following this case for quite some time as it's evolved. And then recently we saw some FLIR footage with an A10 Warthog in it. And it just made me think that the object we see in this Warthog video looks or sounds like it could be similar to what the helicopter pilot saw in the Tucson case.
Some people swear that I know the one you're referring to, that
Right.
video, it is a legit video. The question
Right.
is, what does it show? And some people say it's a UAP. Other people say, no, it's a drone. Right now, there is some, quietly some fierce debate going on to determine what it actually was. And that's why it's important you hear from the people on the ground, you hear from the radar operators, you hear from the folks there that were actually on the scene at the time, possibly from pilots. That's important. Then you find out, you cast a broader net. You start talking to commercial pilots who may have been in the area at the time, right?
Yeah.
And whatnot. And then you start talking to private pilots, maybe someone who's flying a Cessna, right, from the next town over. So that's how you get additional fidelity on an incident like that.
Absolutely. No, thank you. Mr. Christopher Sharp. Hi, Chris. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Did ATIP or the UAPTF study any UK cases with exception of Rendlesham Forest?
I'm going to let them answer that. The only reason why I say it is because that is a question that the UK and the United States need to answer. I'm not gonna speak. I don't want to provide an answer that puts either country in a situation where they have to respond. That's not my place to do.
No, that's absolutely fantastic. Let's do one or two more. Are you okay for time, Lou? Because I know we've just gone over.
Actually, I do have to I have to move my mother-in-law in her new apartment, so I have unfortunately no rest for the weary. So
no, that's absolutely fine. So, guys, I'll have to leave it at that. Maybe Lou will
let's
come back
do
in
one
another.
More. Go ahead.
Go
let's
on.
do one more. I feel terrible. You see, you're making me feel guilty. So let's go ahead.
No, I got to find a really good one. Here we go. Oh, no, this one here. What are Lou's thoughts on the UAPs observing us? Not only military bases, but also normal people. This based on people's experience and multiple sightings of the same kind of UAP.
On the UAP UFOs, what are thoughts on you?
So I guess it's like alluding to.
Is it possible that you? Forgive me, I'm not sure I understand the question. Are they conducting surveillance on us? Is that the tone of the
Yeah, I
question?
think this is Yorno. Actually, I know Yorno. Thank you for the question. I think she's alluding to the fact that people, civilians, are experiencing UAP.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, no, that's clear. I mean, we have military incidents, but we've had historical, obviously reference going back hundreds and hundreds of years of UAP, UFOs. In fact, for indigenous people, it was common. So I don't think it's anything new. I think it's certainly possible that whatever these are conducting some sort of surveillance or reconnaissance on us. Now the question is, for what reason, right? I mean, we surveil species on our own planet all the time, and we fly a helicopter over the Serengeti. We scare the hell out of wildebeest. They run in a stampede. We decide that one we're going to dart. We dart it. All of a sudden, the thing wakes up after thinking, what the hell was that? And all of a sudden, it runs back to its herd and said, "Man, you're not going to believe what just happened to me, right?" And what happens? The herd looks at him like, "Man, what are you talking about, man? Are you kidding me, man? Come on. What watering hole were you just at? No more sun. You've been in the sun too long there, Jim." So, yeah, it's certainly possible.
Excellent. That's great. Well, listen, thank you everyone that has been watching. For the people that sent super stickers, thank you so much. For the questions, for the continued support, and hopefully we'll do this again in a couple more months' time. And hopefully
we'll do it in person, right? Maybe we get to see each other.
Yes. No more said about that just yet.
Got it.
Thank you, everyone. I am going to be back here in a couple of days' time with Tim McMillan from the Debrief. So I hope you can join me there.
Yeah, you have Tim coming on.
Yeah.
Ooh, man, that guy is solid.
Yeah.
I tell you, he's a hell of an investigator, man. Like, for real. Like from an investigator to an investigator, he's the one guy you do not want on your bad side. That is the kind of guy that will find every little thing about you, man. He's tenacious as hell.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to prep for that one because he's a super knowledgeable guy. So yeah,
he is good dude. Really, really good. He's really helped advance the conversation, and he's objective and critical, and he's exactly the kind of guy that you want in front of a jury presenting a case. Yeah, I mean, he's fantastic.
Excellent. Yes, I hope everyone can join me for that one. But for now, guys, please say thank you to Lou virtually.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye now.